The morning sunlight crept through the thin white curtains, spilling over a wooden table where 2 cups of tea waited, still steaming. Outside, the countryside stirred, the sound of birds, the distant hum of life, the whisper of a new day beginning. James leaned against the doorway, watching Diep as she tied her hair into a simple braid. There was grace in her movements, serenity in her smile, a quiet radiance that seemed to paint light back into his weary world. Months had passed since the storms of their past had finally calmed, the betrayals, the losses, the rebuilding. Once, James had been known as the powerful CEO who ruled skyscrapers and boardrooms. But power had a cost. Now, in this modest home tucked between hills and fields, he was just a man rediscovering what it meant to breathe freely. And Diep, once the shy village girl who sold vegetables in the market, had become his anchor, his quiet strength, his calm amid the noise. "Breakfast is ready," she called softly, her voice like the morning breeze. The table was humble: a bowl of soup, a loaf of fresh bread, 2 boiled eggs. But to James, it felt like a feast, not because of what was served, but because of the care that came with it. "You didn't have to wake up so early," he said, smiling. "I like the quiet mornings," she replied, "and I like seeing you start your day with a smile." He laughed, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You're the reason I smile, Diep." Outside, their small garden shimmered with dew. Rows of green vegetables glistened in the soft light. James had planted them himself, though clumsily at first. He used to handle contracts worth millions, but nurturing seeds, waiting, tending, hoping, that was an entirely different kind of challenge. Diep had taught him patience. Love, she often said, was like the soil, it didn't bloom by magic. It required care, faith, and effort. Some days were warm, filled with laughter and simple joy. Others, fatigue and frustration would creep in. They argued over small things: unpaid bills, leaky roofs, the lingering habits of his old life. But every evening, without fail, they shared tea by the porch. They had a rule: never sleep angry, never end a day without gratitude. One quiet night, under a sky scattered with stars, Diep rested her head on his shoulder. "James," she whispered, "do you ever miss your old life?" He was silent for a while. "Sometimes," he said softly, "but only a little. Because now I have something money could never buy: peace, and you." She smiled, her eyes glimmering in the moonlight. "Peace isn't easy to find," she murmured. "But I think we earned it," James nodded. She was right. Love wasn't something that simply appeared and stayed. It was built, brick by brick, word by word, day after day. It was choosing each other, even when life felt heavy. And as the scent of wet earth drifted through the open window, James looked at Diep and thought, this is it. This is love, not a miracle, but a promise kept. Again and again, the following months flowed peacefully. Yet beneath that calm rhythm, new challenges slowly unfolded. James had started rebuilding a small agricultural business from scratch. Gone were the marble offices and boardroom glass towers. Now his office was a wooden desk in the corner of their living room, surrounded by papers, teacups, and the smell of soil. Diep often helped with the little things, organizing files, recording orders, talking to local farmers. She wasn't trained in business, but she was observant, practical, sincere. James, she said one afternoon, studying a stack of invoices, why don't we buy crops directly from the villagers instead of through suppliers? They'll earn more, and we'll get better produce. James looked up, impressed. You're learning fast, he said with a grin. She laughed softly. Maybe one day I'll be your business partner, not just your wife. Her words lingered long after she'd gone to feed the chickens. Watching her from the window, her hair glinting under the sunlight, her movements unhurried, he felt an ache of tenderness. That was the kind of love that deepened with time, like roots anchoring unseen beneath the soil. But life, as ever, had its tests. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered over the mountains. The rain came hard and fast, drowning the fields, flooding the warehouse they'd just built. Workers scrambled, shouting, lifting sacks of rice and vegetables to higher ground. James's shirt was soaked, his hands caked with mud as he hauled crates through the torrent. James, Diep cried, running through the rain. You'll get sick. Let me help. Stay inside, Diep, he shouted back, his voice barely carrying through the storm. It's too dangerous, but she didn't listen. She grabbed a bucket and began scooping water out of the flooded floor beside him. Lightning split the sky. The wind howled like a beast. And through it all, they worked, soaked to the bone, side by side. When the storm finally broke, silence returned, heavy and damp. The warehouse was a wreck. Half the goods were gone. James sank to the ground, exhausted. Diep knelt beside him, trembling. We lost so much, she whispered. I know, he said quietly. But we'll rebuild. Tears welled in her eyes. Aren't you tired, James? Every time we stand, something knocks us down. He took her hand, his thumb brushing her wet skin. Of course I'm tired, he said. But when I look at you, I find a reason to keep going. That night, as rain dripped from the roof and the scent of damp earth filled their home, they sat close by the fire. Words weren't needed. Silence spoke for them, of faith, of endurance, of love that refused to fade. Maybe love isn't about never falling, Too Diep whispered, her voice barely above the crackle of flames. Maybe it's about getting up, together, every time. James smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Exactly. Love isn't a miracle. It's our effort, every day. The next morning, sunlight returned as if nothing had happened. Dew shimmered on the grass. The air was fresh, forgiving. James stood in the doorway of the warehouse, surveying the ruin, broken boxes, soaked sacks, mud everywhere. Too Diep approached quietly, 2 cups of tea in her hands. Drink this, she said softly. It'll warm you. He took the cup, smiling faintly. I thought last night was the end, he murmured, but maybe it's just another beginning. She nodded. We've faced worse, haven't we? Her optimism was contagious. They began to clean. James shoveled mud while Too Diep laid out the salvageable goods under the sun to dry. Their hands blistered, their backs ached. Yet laughter found its way back between the chores. Sometimes, the most beautiful sound wasn't music, it was the sound of 2 people working side by side, sharing both burden and hope. By noon, the workers began returning. Many had feared losing their jobs after the flood. But when they saw James and Too Diep, muddy, sweating, uncomplaining, something inside them shifted. If the boss doesn't give up, one whispered, why should we? Together, they spent the day cleaning and repairing. Too Diep cooked rice and soup for everyone, serving each bowl with gentle hands and a soft smile. James thanked each worker by name. Those small gestures, unnoticed by the world, became the heart of quiet leadership. By evening, the warehouse stood once again, not perfect, not new, but alive. Too Diep leaned against the doorway, her hair messy, her face tired but glowing. It's not as bad as I thought, she said with a smile. James wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Because of you, he said. You never stop believing. She looked up, her eyes shining. I believe because you keep standing up. Because we're not fighting alone. He touched her cheek. Before I met you, I thought love was magic, sudden, dazzling, like lightning. Now I know it's patience, it's work, it's us, right here, choosing each other even when everything falls apart. She smiled softly. Then let's keep choosing each other. Every day. That night, after the workers had gone, they stood outside under the stars. The storm had washed the sky clean. The moonlight shimmered over the damp earth. James pulled her close. "We'll build again," he whispered. "Better this time." Diep looked up, her voice trembling with warmth. "As long as we're together," she said, "I believe we can." In that quiet, surrounded by the scent of rain and the hum of crickets, they both knew love didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be real. Weeks passed. Slowly, life began to bloom again. The sun seemed to shine brighter, not just over the fields, but in their hearts. The business recovered. New clients arrived. Workers smiled more easily. What had once been tragedy became a story of perseverance, proof that strength grows from love, not wealth. One morning, Diep stood by the garden watering her patch of jasmine. The air was fragrant and new. James stepped out holding an envelope, his expression calm. "What's that?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. He handed it to her. "A contract from our new partner," he said. "They saw how we managed the crisis." "They said they want to work with people who don't give up." Her eyes filled with tears. "After everything we went through, it feels unreal," he smiled. "It's not a miracle, Diep. It's what happens when you believe, even when no one else does." Just then, a small voice called from the gate. "Mom, Dad." It was Nye, their little girl, her laughter bright as the morning sun. She ran toward them, tiny feet kicking up dust, eyes full of joy. Diep knelt, scooping her into her arms. James wrapped them both in an embrace. "Welcome home, my little sunshine," he whispered. "Are we all together now?" Nye asked, looking up. James and Diep exchanged a glance, a look full of unspoken promises. "Yes," Diep said, her voice trembling. "From now on, always together." That afternoon, they sat under the old tamarind tree, sharing a meal and laughter. The workers passing by waved, smiling at the family who had endured so much and still stood tall. As the sun began to set, James watched Diep and Nye chase each other through the garden, their laughter echoing across the fields. A quiet fullness settled over him, the kind of happiness that asks for nothing more. He realized then that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect days. It was about waking up and choosing, again and again, to try. Diep came over, teasing, "You're thinking again." He smiled, taking her hand. "Just about how lucky I am, to have you, to have her, to have this life." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We built it together, James. Every laugh, every tear." It was worth it. The horizon turned golden, the sky melting into dusk. The storm that once tore their lives apart now felt distant, a memory that had only made them stronger. Love isn't a miracle, James whispered. It's a choice we make every single day. Diep smiled, her voice a soft echo. Then let's keep choosing each other. Forever. And so they stood there, hand in hand, heart to heart, facing the future not with fear, but with faith. The kind of faith only true love can bring, because true love isn't built on miracles or perfect days. It's built on patience, trust, and daily effort. James and Diep showed that even through storms, love can survive, when two hearts decide, every single day, to stay and to fight together. Happiness, they learned, isn't found. It's created, one act of kindness, one quiet moment, one shared sunrise at a time.